This is Mike Farrell. I always want to roll that company behind my name, but I'm not gonna. It's Mike Farrell at MikeFarrellSports.com. I've been saying the other thing for 24 years, and I'm losing my mind a bit. But now it's time for me to have some fun with my podcast, and I have a special guest here from NBC Sports Edge, Thor Nystrom. Now, you said you got into this not because of me, but I was one of the guys that you were watching growing up. Like, how old are you?
I've been reading you for a long time. I don't know when it started, but I've been reading you for a long time. People that follow me and read me will know that I come from college football first, not NFL. I cover college football when it's not NFL draft time, and I'm a real college football geek. And I get into the recruiting, a couple times a year as well. I've been following your work for a long time reader. So
Who's your college
it's really
team?
cool to join you.
Who's your college team?
The University of Kansas, unfortunately. That was my undergrad. And then in grad school, I got a slightly better one. I got Iowa. But you'll appreciate this, Mike. I watched the Kansas games no matter what, baby. Puka Williams, it was good, back Todd Reesing days. We won the Orange Bowl over Virginia Tech. But even recently when they've been, can I swear, Mike? Is that cool? What? Is it cool if I swear?
Say that. Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. Even recently when they've been dog shit, like I still watch basically every game live. There's a couple ones where I can't get it, there because I have to cover another one, but every Kansas game I can watch live, I do.
I feel bad for you, man. I mean, that 2007 was a long time ago, and the fat man ain't coming back. So, but listen,
respect to Mangino.
But you did beat Texas in 18 overtimes last year. That's offensive. They get very upset about that stuff.
Oh, they're a very sensitive fan base. I know.
Yeah. Oh my God. Every fan base is sensitive. So let's talk NFL draft. That's what we're here to talk about. I've been doing it, I don't know, for the last 10 years or so, just because I know these kids out of high school and have really an interesting perspective on them from ninth grade and up. You've been doing it for what? How many years?
I've been doing the NFL draft stuff for 5 or 6, like the rankings, something like that. Yeah.
It's fun. Listen, I'm a draft geek. I love it. I watch every round, every pick. All my friends get upset. It used to be, it just took up your entire weekend. It still does, but at least Sunday's clear now. But let's talk edge. Let's talk Walker, Thibodeau, Hutchinson. What's your order? Because I got mine.
I would say Hutchinson, Thibodeau, Walker, Johnson would be my top 4.
Okay, so Johnson in the mix here. Now, a lot of people have him late first round. Some have him now top 15. Obviously, he transferred over from Georgia to Florida State, had a great year. You watch his film, he's as good as anybody. What do you think's holding him back? What do you think? Why isn't he in that discussion at the top?
It's like you watch a horse race and one of the horses starts, back. Maybe it's not even his through a fault of his own, but you're focusing on the horses in front. Johnson was, it's Mike, as being a college football guy, like Alabama and Ohio State's receiving corps recently, there's been multiple years they have 4 first-round receivers, right? And so what it manifested in was, for instance, Jamison Williams had to leave Columbus before last season to go to Tallahassee so he could even get on the field and get targeted, right? Because he was behind Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson and Olave. Sort of a similar thing with Johnson, where earlier in his career, he was on that super stacked Georgia front, right? And they don't pin, with the edge guys, they don't pin their ears back. It's one of the criticisms about Walker's eval, that he didn't get enough sacks and stuff like that. And Walker, of course, was moving inside as well. You had so many guys there. You had Wyatt, you had Jordan Davis, you had Trayvon Walker on the other side. We're going to have a first rounder next year as well, at least. And so, he had to go to Florida State. But I think the thing that elevated him up was before, and maybe it was scheme specific, what we were seeing was very sturdy player, sets the edge, does all the workman-like stuff, and absolutely relentless, like a motor for days. But like what you were wondering was, is he a good athlete, number one? Number two, can he rush the passer? Does he have that? And then the pass rushing moves. Because before it was more like the relentlessness and the power aspect of his game, as well as the first step, but not as much of the nuance and the counter moves. That's what we got to see this past year at Florida State. He finally got unleashed and everything came out, and then his testing profile backed up what he had hoped it would. So it locked him into the top 15, I think.
Yeah. And, I don't know why I picture him in a Ravens uniform. I just do.
Yeah, I like that.
It just, there's some guys you picture in a uniform, and that's part of the draft coverage too. It's like for fans of teams, you're a Cowboys fan, you could picture, certain guys in Cowboys uniforms, but for guys like us, it just sort of, you create a picture. Like for some reason, I've got Brian Brzee in a Lions uniform, and he's 2023, and I don't know why. It just looks right. So, Jermaine Johnson could be the fourth edge to go. Most likely probably will be the fourth edge to go unless somebody moves up or Thibodeau slides. See, I've got Walker, and everybody, says, oh, geez, he is Johnny come lately and blah, blah, blah. His testing was amazing, and people will bring up Mike Mamula and all that other stuff, who, by the way, had a pretty good pro career and was a very, very good college football player. But, they'll bring that up that he's a testing guy. He didn't have a lot of sacks, but as you mentioned, you share the wealth at Georgia. There's just so much talent across the front, defensive front. And he really is exceptional against the run. And people don't understand that, where Thibodeau is an outside guy, speed rush guy, okay against the run. He can string things out, but point of attack might be a little bit of a weakness. And, we saw Hutchinson, he can be bottled up, where I just don't think Walker can be in the run game. So I've got Walker, then I got Hutchinson. I want to say Johnson, but I'm going to say Thibodeau. The reason I worry about Thibodeau, a West Coast kid, was a little flaky out of high school. The love of the sport type of thing out there is hard to read because they're also laid back. And then he did that interview with Joel Klatt, where he's talking about, Nike and his future as a mogul and all this other stuff. I don't think he's fallen out of the top 10 though. Have you heard anything different?
I haven't. Even the worst case scenario, you would think he would be stopped by the Falcons. Something would need to get real wonky. And the specific thing would be if you had multiple quarterbacks going above there. I think probably that's the only scenario where he could go below 8. But I in a normal scenario, in most scenarios that I play out, he ain't getting lower than 8.
And here's the problem. We all know there isn't a top 10 talent quarterback in this draft. Well, I know. You may have Malik Willis as a top 10 talent. Okay. And we can argue that in a second. But to me, there's going to be 2 in the top 10. Somebody's going to trade up, or, a Carolina or a Seattle or somebody like that is going to take, or Atlanta is going to take a quarterback when they aren't expected to. And that's going to drop some very, very talented guys down. It could drop a Stingley out of the top 10. It could drop a Thibodeau out of the top 10. And I think those teams that are going to be smart sitting there at 11, 12, 13, and they're saying, okay, if I'm the Washington Commanders, I've got a loaded defensive line, but I could use some defensive back help. If Stingley falls to me, let me have him. But so Thibodeau could slide is what I'm saying, because I think there's going to be 2 quarterbacks top 10. Let's talk Willis. You make a case for him to be as high as 2, right?
I do.
And go ahead, make the case.
I think the tools, they're not unprecedented because we see Michael Vick before, but outside of that, the physical tools are unprecedented. For me, he's just a right-handed Michael Vick. The athleticism is dang near the same. He ran a 4.37 at Auburn. We've seen him running, open field. The other thing is he runs with Jalen Hurts like power. So you have sort of quasi Lamar Jackson speed and wiggle, maybe not quite there, but if it's not, it's just sort of a whisker below. But he runs with the Hurts power. In addition to that, he's a well-fortified kid, and then just an absolute bazooka for an arm, right? Yep. He can get it 70 yards downfield. I also think it bears mentioning how bad his collegiate situation was. At the first stop, Gus Malzahn just made a total eval mistake on him that cost him his job. And then he goes to Liberty the past couple of years, played with very little NFL talent, basically zero around him, terrible offensive line in front of him. Receivers couldn't separate, didn't really have a running back. Sorry, Joshua Mack. And then he was beating some of these pretty good teams on the road as enormous underdogs, almost single-handedly. Virginia Tech, where he made plays that you can't defend, especially in college, but even in the NFL, there's some plays there where it's like you don't really see that happening. The 4th and 3 where he did the pirouette and then he went out to the right and hit the guy 50 yards downfield when he's sort of off balance, was insane. You just don't see plays like that. So it's the ceiling thing, and at a position where if you hit that ceiling and you get that guy on a rookie contract, you got a cheat code for 3 or 4 years. So just with the ceiling, I think it's worth a dice roll.
Yeah, and I'll counter that in a second. Because the quarterbacks you mentioned are, listen, Michael Vick's a legend, right? Lamar Jackson's arguably, if not Michael Vick, it's Lamar Jackson who's the best athlete to ever play quarterback. Jalen Hurts isn't very good. And, but I get the power running portion of it because Hurts is built like a running back in some ways. But first, Gus didn't make that decision. That wasn't Gus. Poor Gus. Bo Nix was a legacy.
Yep.
The boosters at Auburn were not going to let Malik Willis win that football job. Bo Nix was going to be the starter. Malik, I think, made the right choice. Now Liberty was not fit, and you're right. There's not a lot of talent there. My thing is, the NFL figures people out pretty quickly if you're not a passer. Like if you see some of these guys winning Super Bowls, they are extreme passers of the ball. I mean, they could fit it into any window. They could throw guys open. They could throw the back shoulder. They could do all these things with tremendous accuracy. Whereas the Vicks and the Jacksons and the Hurts and the Kaepernicks, and I'm trying to think of other guys who were, RG3, guys who were hard to defend at first, you figure out. You keep them bottled up as best you can. Even Mahomes are seeing a little bit of this now. And you make them sort of throw off their back foot or make them feel uncomfortable in the pocket, and they're going to struggle. So that's why number 2 is a little high for me, for a guy who I think is going to have to learn on the job. He first year may sit. That would probably be the smart thing to do. So let's say the Lions take him. Goff will be the starter. And then, they'll move to the Malik Willis era. Trey Lance is another example. So that's the slow burn at number 2. And then if he doesn't pan out, you mentioned the first contract, you're stuck. Okay. So you're stuck for 4 years minimum, and you have to change your entire franchise if that guy doesn't pan out quick. So number 2 is a little bit lofty. Let me look at Tua. Tua was not the number 5 pick. It was a ridiculous choice. He didn't have the arm strength of Malik Willis. We're not talking about the same thing here. He wasn't athletic like him, but the Dolphins are kind of screwed now. Now they're trying to get catch and run guys to offset his inability. The Lions, if they take Malik Willis, in my opinion, might have to go and get big receivers, guys with a catch radius of craziness, because he's not overly accurate. So we'll see. I know he's going to go top 10. I don't think Detroit. I do think Carolina's got no picks beyond 6 until the hundreds. And I could see Matt Rule trying to save his job by taking that guy, but they might also trade back. But the quarterback debate after him, it's hard to rate him. I've got Ritter number 2. Who do you have?
Matt Corral, your boy. I got him number 2. I think Matt Corral is the only other quarterback in this class that has top 10 NFL starter potential if he hits his ceiling.
Well, I'll note Matt Corral is my number 1.
Yeah.
So my number 2 is Ritter, and then I got Willis. So continue with Corral.
So, and then Ritter's my 3rd, by the way. So we have the same, it's just in a different order. But Corral, huge arm, right? Like he has the smaller frame. So when he came into college at first, you weren't expecting, or at least I know you watch him going way back, but like when he came in, it really took me off guard, the velocity and then how far he could push the ball down the field. Certainly a staple of his game, sort of leads with that foot. And then the other thing is, he adds a legitimate dual threat ability. You saw this more this past season. I mean, you've seen it in the past couple of years, but this past season, you've seen it even more, where teams were trying to copy Barry Odom's strategy from 2020, where Odom was like, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. We're going to drop 8 guys the entire game. We're going to take away Elijah Moore. Let's see what happens to Matt Corral. And Matt Corral, like, he starts glitching, like his head was going like a fembot in Austin Powers, like whatever. He couldn't deal with it, right? But this year, when teams would drop 8 on him, he was like, okay, I'll just steal the 6 yards every time. I ain't throwing it into double coverage no more. And he did. So you saw him cut way down on the mistakes. You saw him not compound the mistakes. And I think he got a little bit better at reading the field too, or at least not tossing it up when he was confused. So everything that is a nitpick on Matt Corral's eval, he can get better at. That's why I see that ceiling there.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, he's going to get killed if he does that in the NFL. So you have to pick your spots. I mean, the Tennessee game was just ugly to watch because he ran too much
too, right?
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, you can't have that. So you talk about Willis, where you actually want him to probably read one's not there at first, tuck and run and make plays. Matt Corral's like, read one's not there. Let's go 2-3. Let's not tuck and run, because he isn't a big guy. He's not huge. The reason I like him a lot is the mental makeup. Now, he was really rough around the edges in high school. I mean, he got kicked out of one high school for popping Gretzky's kid in the face. And then, he had admitted alcohol problems. I don't know if there were drug problems in there as well, but, there was so much about him that I learned when he was committed to USC. Right. And then, he got in trouble, and he got trouble again, and he got trouble again. And we had him out at the 5-Star Challenge in Indianapolis, and he got in trouble there. And then Florida wanted him, and then they didn't want him. And he landed at Ole Miss, which was perfect fit for him because Kiffin, has done a great job with him. But he's matured a lot. Like, there are guys that I know are turds in high school that are going to be turds forever. The ones that turn it around, and they're rare, to me, have the mental makeup to be a leader, to be successful. His team loves him. You could see the concern they had for him in the injury in the bowl game. So I'm taking the physical skills. Now, if he was in the Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields draft, right, he's not close to one. Yeah. He's in this draft. He's in with the guy with the small hands, the guy who can't read defenses, the guy who's won a ton of games, but not against great competition. And on you go. It's not a good quarterback class. So that's why I like him. Now, again, I wouldn't touch him in the top 10. Somebody might. I don't think he will go top 10. I think we're going to see Willis, and I think we're going to see Ritter go top 10. And I like Ritter the more I watch him. I didn't like him at first. And then I watched him again and again and again and again. And I just started to fall in love with him. And he kept creeping up my board. He passed Willis. I guarantee if I watch him again, he might get ahead of Corral. So tell me what you like about Ritter.
So like before this past season, like in the summer when I was ready, I watched all of his clips before, you watch them live, but you watch them too. And the thing that concerned me about him, it was a lack of placement that went beyond that, where it was manifesting in this crazy risk averse type aerial strategy where there was all these passes short, right? It was the sideline to sideline thing. And you could tell Cincinnati's coaches were keeping him away from the more nuanced stuff because they didn't trust his placement. So at that time, I comped him to Brett Hundley. You remember him from UCLA, where it's just, It was all the short passes. And then he sort of fooled people because he had a decent frame and he was athletic. The difference this year, there was a real change with him because at that time I had him like as a 5th, 6th round kind of a guy. The big difference this year was he lopped almost 10% off the passes that were within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So now he was going downfield more. And not only that, the more aggressive approach, it accompanied a big uptick in accuracy. So, I mean, you have those two things going up. You already know that you have a really, really good athlete. And he doesn't have the bazooka of the arm of the top 3 guys, in my opinion, Willis and Corral. And then I think Strong's got sorry for the pun, a stronger arm as well. But Ritter, I would put just the level below that. He's certainly got a stronger arm than Kenny Pickett, et cetera. So you get the dual threat element to his game too. And he don't make any mistakes. That was the one thing that Fickle drilled into his head is you take care of the ball. And he took those lessons to heart.
Is Kenny Pickett Christian Ponder?
Man, I'm coming to you from Minneapolis right now. So that question really hits home. He might be. In a down quarterback class where a guy gets elevated up, he has a couple specific skills to the college game, and he was in good circumstances last year. And because of the market gets pushed up. Here's my concern with Pickett. It don't got nothing to do with his little hands. I don't care about that. What I care about is he was a 5-year player and a 4-year starter that didn't blow up until his last year. And Mike, as you know, circumstances were very good at Pitt last year. You had Jordan Addison, who's one of the best receivers in college football, and they went 4 deep outside of him at receiver. Yeah. I mean, they legitimately went 5 deep. and then they had 2 good tight ends, and then they had
Very
the
good
dual
tight
running backs as well. Yeah. Not only that, the ACC happened to be way down. If you look at the strength of the defenses that Kenny Pickett played last year to put up those numbers, they were awful. I actually averaged them out where the average defense he played was number 80 SP plus. The team that played the number 80 SP plus overall schedule was Louisiana Tech. So that's why it reminds me similar of with Zach Wilson in the last class. I wasn't quite as high on him as other people, because his 1 year where he put up the big production, he was ripping up all these shitty defenses.
Yeah.
That was sort of the case with Pickett, but the difference was Zach Wilson was winning downfield. Kenny Pickett was winning with a lot of short things that Jordan Addison would just rip off 15-yard yaks on,
And Zach Wilson has a much better arm.
Yes.
And more
Absolutely.
arm talent. And, listen, everybody's fallen in love with this off-platform stuff because of Mahomes. And I get that. And this isn't to slam Kenny Pickett, but I would be scared to death if I was a GM taking him in the first round. And we know he's going to be taken in the first round. He could be taken by the Steelers at 20. They might even have to trade up if they want him, or he could go as high as 6, which I can't believe, but I've heard, that Carolina is interested. And, obviously the Eagles, who I think are going to trade up, they're another one who could, covet him. I think they like Ritter better, but there's going to be some teams, the Saints, the Eagles, somebody's going to package a couple picks, get up there, and there's going to be a panic. If Willis goes 2, as you mentioned,
all the QB needy teams, it's like red siren time, right?
That 6th pick right there, Carolina's phone's going to blow up, because there's very, few guys after that. You either love Ritter or you love Pickett or you love Corral. It's like, I could take any 3 of them. No, there's very diverse opinions about all these guys. So I think if that does happen, I think that 6th pick is going to be interesting. Then we could have, just like the Ponder year, we could have some really average quarterbacks taken in the top 15 of the draft, and it could set franchises back more than ever now. Like back then, okay, the guaranteed money, the 4 and 5, all that contract stuff, it wasn't like it is now. You could be really salary cap strapped if you're building a team around skill players and you take a first round quarterback. I mean, you can be, you're more strapped if you give Aaron Rodgers $80 million, or Russell Wilson or Matt Ryan. Those are better examples. Aaron Rodgers, everybody has to leave. Russell Wilson, everybody had to leave. And then they had to get rid of him. And Atlanta, same thing. Ryan got all that money, everybody had to leave, then they got rid of him. But if you take the wrong first round pick, first of all, how many people are going to be the Cardinals and take 2 first rounders in the top 10 2 years in a row? Just doesn't happen. Somebody's losing their job if that happens. And then that was the case with the GM and Kingsbury coming in. So I worry about the quarterbacks. I don't worry about the tackles. I love this group of tackles. Now, I don't see Charles Cross in the same group as Ike Ekwonu and Evan Neal. Do you?
Same. No, I don't. Same. Absolute same.
Where is it coming from? Because it's not his fault that Mike Leach runs this ridiculous offense that you can't get any gauge on a pass set. Yep. But how is he up there at 6 or 5? I think he's top 20.
Yeah, I think it's sort of the same thing that led to Andre Dillard being a top 20 pick or whatever he was, except without learning the lesson that we should have learned from the Andre Dillard thing. You have a prospect that looks really good frame, projectable, and then he tested like an absolute banshee. And then when you're looking in his advanced stats, it's like, he had 700 pass pro reps and he only gave up 2 pressures. And it's like, what team gets the ball out quicker, the passing game, than any team in the NCAA? It's always Leach's team. It's always like a second and a half. It's like 3 steps and it's gone. To give up consistent sacks in that system, you would have to suck.
Yep. I mean, it really suck, because
yes,
it's 2 seconds and gone, maybe less than that, 1.5 seconds and gone. So when you watch him on film and you see the pass, you don't really even see a set. He's just a big guy getting in the way. Now,
and the splits, Mike, the splits are they're not analogous at all to the NFL in that air raid system, especially the way that Leach does it.
Right.
It's just a totally different thing, in the transition to the NFL.
And he's a good run blocker, and he's a good run blocker in space, which is what you want. But if you're going to take a tackle in the top 10, he better be a good pass blocker, or he better not be a right tackle. You want a right tackle, wait. So,
Yeah.
to me, it's Neal. And I think, honestly, when I was looking at this class, I'm not in love with this draft class. I'm just not. It's not great. It's good. It's not great. You're lacking quarterbacks. You're lacking running backs. There's certain positions. Linebackers not great. I saw one guy that I picture in 12 years putting on a gold jacket, and it's Evan Neal. And there's nobody else that I can guarantee that's going to happen. If he stay healthy, he's going to be that guy. He was 380 pounds in high school. He was a big, chubby kid, but very, very good. And he said to himself, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to go to Alabama and I'm going to lose 40 pounds and I'm going to condition myself. And now he's turned into someone who would arguably on the athletic scale of Walker on the opposite side. So I think he's number one and then Icky's number two. What do you got?
Same. Yeah, absolute same. I don't know how you can argue against anything with Evan Neal's profile. He went to, you said it. He worked really hard initially. He always had the talent, and then he was playing right away too, right? Like, and by the way, it started at 3 different positions. So I mean, we sort of pigeonhole him a little bit, but he has more versatility and understands more things online and has a more diverse skill set than just he has to play this very specific spot. For me, he is the number one guy. Ekwonu has come on. Certainly, the athleticism is there, and he was dominant last year. That going back a couple years in the ACC, even when Darisaw was coming out, you talk to people around the ACC, and they'd be like, "Wait till next year with Ekwonu." He's a really, really good player. Like watching Bam Knight when you're watching him, and Ekwonu just wiping people out. But it's with Neal, it is that prototypical, like it when you see it. He's the guy. You've seen it on the field. He's proved the athleticism, and he works his tail off. And he's coming from the football factory and everything like that. So also a cleaner projection to left tackle, I think, although both of them would say that they are, and they're probably both going to be good ones in the NFL, but it would be Evan Neal for me for sure. And then, cross number 3, like we're talking about, like I would love to knock Cross down a little bit more just because I got burned on Andre Dillard and I ain't never getting burned on a Leach tackle again. But the issue is the next tackle beyond that is Trevor Penning, on a lot of lists. Well, that was a guy who had 16 penalties last year in the FCS, and he's not a great pass blocker yet. So I realize like he's a dominant run blocker and he's athletic and everything, but he's got some real warts on his profile. I can't put him in the top 3. Or Raymond, he's got too far to go. You got to work with him a little bit. Tools are great. And then you're getting down into the right tackles in the top of the second round, like Falele and stuff like that. So Tyler Smith is a kid I love. I'm going to rank Tyler Smith as a first rounder. I see Tyler Smith as Penning, only younger and more projectable. Penning's a couple years older than he is. Smith basically has the same profile. He's a dominant run blocker who has some balance issues in pass pro, who's going to grab you, when he starts to lose a rep and gets penalties. Those guys were the 2 guys that had 16 penalties, along with the kid from Mississippi, Scott Lashley. Those are the 3 guys in this entire offensive line class that had 16 penalties last year. But Smith, like I said, he's not been around as long as Penning. He's got more to learn. You've seen him ascend really quickly. So I'd rather have his next 10 years than Trevor Penning's.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, because the interior line, I think, is very good as well in this draft. I mean, you got Linderbaum and Zion Johnson, both can be, starting centers. Zion's learning the position. And then there's a lot of depth on the interior. But after the 3 tackles, you're right. There's the question mark as to who do you like. Now, Penning, physical, everybody loves that. You want that defensive mentality as an offensive player. I would love to see him go to the Saints just because he's Kyle Turley is who he is. He's exactly good. He's gonna be a helmet throwing maniac with a mullet. And he's going to have a solid career, but Turley's not a Hall of Famer. And we're not talking about that with any of those guys after the top 3. So, I think what'll happen though, as we see, is Cross will go to the Giants or the Jets probably, or go in the top 10. And then you'll start to see everybody saying, okay, if we want to tackle, we're going to have to probably take one higher than we expected. And maybe we're going to have to go in the 15 to 20 range. And then you're going to start seeing some reaches. The good news is you don't have to really reach on linebacker because I think there's only one linebacker in this class I would take in the first round. That's Devin Lloyd. I would not take Nakobe Dean in the first round. What would you do?
I think I'm with you on that. You know, I could see the very, very end of the first, but I would be fine with him dropping into the second just because people need to understand, you know, there's a devaluation with the linebackers, but the specific reason is you generally only got 2 linebackers out there in the NFL, right? Sometimes you're even down to 1, but there's very few teams where, you know, it's 50%. In fact, I think it's 0 that are like in a 4, or the 3-4, whatever, the whole time, because you're usually in the nickel or the dime. And so, you know, when you only need 2 of those, you just think about like this sort of the scarcity. It's the reason that you can wait around a little bit longer. And then teams are going more to how would you say, positionless on defense, where it's like all the different chess pieces. So like that sort of traditional run stopping linebacker, first of all, the game's not played that way anymore. And then second of all, they're just devalued because it's more of a passing thing at this point, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and you've had some sought off linebackers that have been successful in the recent years and have been first rounders and have panned out. You know, one of them also coming from Georgia and Roquan Smith, but you know, Nakobe, I've seen all these guys, right? And you see their body types. Roquan Smith is a different body type than Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean is I was surprised he measured in at 6 foot. I think he's 5'11" in that range. He's super fast, right?
Yeah.
But he's more of a Jabril Peppers type of body type than he is a linebacker body type. He's not overly long, and he's going to be exploited in coverage. So if you're in a scheme where you got a guy who could play that sort of hybrid safety, you know, strong safety linebacker position, and you just want him to run, you know, take the quickest angle of the football and run people down, he's perfect, but he's not good for every set. Devin Lloyd, you could fit in anywhere. He's long, he can drop, he can rush the passer, he can string things out. He didn't test well. I don't care. Some guys just don't. And it's not like he tested poorly, but that's a guy that I think doesn't slide past 15. And if I'm the Eagles sitting there and he's available, I'm taking him in a second.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well said. And I basically agree with all of that. Yeah.
Devin is a heck of a football player. You know, so is Sauce, so is Stingley. The battle of the 2 cornerbacks. Now, if you told me in, you know, the 2019 recruiting class, we had Stingley number 1 in the country overall, first corner ever I ever scouted in 20 plus years that graded out as the number 1 player in the country. And then obviously 2019, he proved it and lived up to it. Now I know Stingley kind of mailed it in the last couple of years. I know this. I know he didn't battle back from injuries the way he would have had he been fighting for draft position. After 2019, if there were an option to be one and done, he would have been one and done, and he'd be off and probably be a top 5 pick. That wasn't the case. He had 2 more years to kill, and he wasn't going to rush himself back on the field, which, you know, what does that speak about him as a football player? I don't think it's not as bad as you think. Clowney mailed it in his last year, and it didn't change anybody's perspective on how good he is. Stingley just had his pro day. He's not dropping outside the top 10, but Sauce is so tall and long. I honestly think Stingley is going to be the better corner in the NFL. But if I'm a GM in the top 10, I don't know which one I'm picking.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely Sauce, just because and it's not because Stingley absolutely has the ability to be, be the best corner out of this class. It's just, I'm scared about the profile. You know, we haven't seen many guys, I mean, even first rounders, but certainly top 15 guys where they only had 1 good year in college. And that year was as a true freshman on one of the most dominant teams of all time. You know, like, so you saw the coverage breakdowns the next year. Some of that was Bo Pelini's fault, of course, but he got singed, quite a bit. And then obviously this past year was the List Frank thing. And so you also have the durability concerns a little bit, but the high octane athlete, and the 2019 tape speaks for itself as far as displaying the flashes. As far as Sauce goes, man, he's just so consistent. He's just so consistent. I know he's going to play in the NFL. He's long. He's technically savvy, gets his hands on so many dang balls, plays within the team concept. He'll help out in the run. I don't have any questions whatsoever about Sauce Gardner because I seen him erase good receivers throughout college when they were playing the better competition.
Yeah, and I will tell you this. I mean, I in instinctually Stingley, athletically Stingley, right? Length, and you mentioned team concept, Sauce. So it's really a toss-up for me. I think Stingley could be, he's the second guy in this class that I would, Evan Neal is a gold jacket guy, right? Evan Neal, I may be crazy, but Evan Neal is Orlando Pace, Jonathan Ogden, no brain, unbelievable, going to be incredible. Penei Sewell wasn't that last year. A lot of people wanted to make him that, but he wasn't. Rashawn Slater was as good or even better, and actually played better as a rookie. But Evan Neal, and then the other one that I just picture with the gold jacket is Stingley. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out, because I like Sauce a lot. And I would love to see Atlanta take Sauce. I mean, you put him and AJ, that is the foundation of a tremendous pass coverage defense. But somebody's going to steal Stingley, man. And somebody's also going to steal Kyle Hamilton. So let's talk about the testing. 4.59, 4.7 at Pro Day, was a top 5 pick. Everybody had him Texans 3, or at least one of the New York teams. I just did a mock where I could see him falling to 25.
Oh, wow.
It was crazy. But I kept looking, and I'm like, okay, this team doesn't need a safety. This team's not going to value a safety. This team's not going to go on a limb. This team's going to trade up. Every team I saw, I could see them just saying, and then the Bills at 25, I could see this kid's still here. What the hell? And we're snapping him up. But he could fall outside of the top 20 and just be a magical, I would hope for my Cowboys, but a magical pick for somebody.
Yeah, I mean, we know that, every year there's guys that the whole process, it's like he's a lock top 10, he's a lock top 10. And then they drop outside of that way further than people thought. Hamilton certainly put himself on the short list for this. Thibodeau was already there, but Hamilton put himself on that short list with the testing. He could have locked himself into the top 10 if he ran in the 4.4, but he didn't got it in him. He's super bursty on the field. I mean, Mike, you've seen where like he'll go all the way across the field to contest the ball. He's got some just crazy flash plays, but it's more in that bursty type thing. That the long speed, it's the one thing that you can prevent you from being like, you put him with the top 2 safeties the last, 25, you put him with Sean Taylor, you put him with, who's the other guy that went really high? But
Jamal Adams went 4, which was,
and Jamal Adams, that's right.
Crazy, but
yeah, I think that the lack of the test, the long speed, I think that knocks him down out of that phylum. And then that's where, who knows? We'll see how the roller coaster goes after that. But that's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, that's going to be, and I mean, I don't know who's going to be present physically, and I haven't really paid attention. I don't care who's in the green room or whatever, but if he is there, that's going to be a green room. That's going to be one of those guys that you're just the camera's going to be on every pick after like 15, and like what's happening. And it could be one of those Lamar Jackson situations where you're looking back to him just sitting around looking at his phone, waiting to be picked. And he turns out to be a great football player. And I hope that's the case. He's a high quality kid, high academic kid, high character kid, great family, diagnoses things well. But as a free, you better be able to run. And that's the thing. You mentioned those flash plays. There was one game, I forget who it was against, national television. He came across 20 yards across the field, made a play on the ball. So that would translate into like, oh, this kid's I didn't expect him to run a 4.3. I expected him to run in the 4.5 range. So 4.59, a little disturbing. And then the pro day, a little bit more disturbing. Speaking of disturbing testing, what's going on at Texas A&M? so coming into this draft, right?
Yeah.
Marvin Leal, I loved coming in, had him at a potential top 10 pick. He's fallen. Kenyon Green, I didn't love, but I felt he was solid, and he's probably going to be end of first round, and he didn't really hurt himself. Isaiah Spiller, there are guys. Weidemeyer was a fringe first rounder heading into this season. There are guys just not testing well, and you wonder about that. It just seems Texas A&M isn't pushing these guys out as as developed as you want.
Yeah, it's the one thing boosters can't pay for down there, right?
Right.
Yeah, once you get on that track, it's no more talking, right? Like it's just the numbers, and that's why you have to add it to some of these players' evaluations. For instance, with Weidermeyer in 2020 when he was playing with Mon, I thought, boy, this guy's a really good blocker and he got ball skills. Now he didn't stretch it down the field, but because Kellen Mond can't throw it down the field is what I thought at the time was why they used him that way. It turns out that he can't stretch the seam with the speed, but within 10 yards, very smooth, has ball skills and stuff like that. And so, I was thinking, yeah, this guy is a really good, I would have put him round 2, heading into this season, but you didn't see, he wasn't even in situations where you would see sort of the manifestation of this. And so when he went out and did what he did with the athletic profile being as bad as it did, it really hurt him. Because you're not going to be able to stretch the seam with that guy in the NFL. It's going to be even closer to the line of scrimmage than he was doing in college, and it's just going to crater the utility a little bit. Unfortunate. And then Isaiah Spiller, he went down as well. A lot of guys. I hadn't thought about the correlation with the school, but you think about it, one after the other after the other. The kid that Leal played next to as well, he didn't test very well either. Peavy. Yeah. I mean, it's like you can go down the line. Like it's really weird, but Jimbo's been recruiting really well along with his buddies down there in College Station. And so you'd think in the future, they're going to start having like sort of these Georgia type drafts, but definitely hasn't manifested yet.
Well, there are teams, obviously that you're concerned about where they have consistent injuries. And now this is a team that I think has top level talent. And now you worry about conditioning, strength and conditioning and all that stuff too. So we'll have to keep an eye on it because they've got so many guys that are, high level quality talent. This number 1 recruiting class in 3 years is going to be one that we look at, and we'll see how they develop. But it just seemed odd to me that you've got Spiller was in the late first round discussion, not even close now. Leal was in the top 15, top 10 discussion, not even close now. Kenyon Green kind of hung on to the late first round, and Weidemeyer was second round, as you mentioned, and some had him potentially late first, and now he's out of the draft probably. So, and they're all A&M. And I'm not picking on A&M fans like, oh, you hate us. No, I didn't test horribly. I didn't run, I didn't jump, I didn't do any of this crap. So don't give it to me, but it just seems there's a correlation. So speaking of testing, let's talk about Jordan Davis.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's to me, he's Vita Vea. That's my comparison. And everybody's like, oh, well, no, Vita Vea ran a 5.1, whatever, blah, blah, blah. This guy's a chaser. He's not a chaser. He runs a 4.88, but he's not a chaser. What do you see out of him?
Yeah. And, some of that was, maybe the usage as well, right? Because, they were using him as, sort of that planet-sized space occupier on early downs. And then some of this was when Walker would move inside, or you'd have some of the edge guys move inside because they were so stacked. So we didn't get to see it as much. He reminds me of like a really rich man's Ashawn Robinson, I would say, as far as like blowing stuff up and then taking out guys' legs. You saw Ashawn doing that in one of the playoff games with the Rams. I think that's the kind of thing you get in a slightly more athletic package. The guy I comp him to it, John Henderson, Big John Henderson. They got the same size dimensions. I think Davis comes into the league a little bit heavier, but Henderson ended up putting on that weight really quickly. I don't think people remember when Henderson came in. If you look at like his rookie cards and then like at the end of Tennessee, he actually looks like kind of skinny. So, that's the one difference. You have to think about it later on, but it's the same sort of thing, just an enormous planet-sized guy that eats double teams for lunch. That's what he does.
Yeah, but what the NFL wants and what I would want, again, he's probably going to go, he's not going past 17, right? The Chargers will take him at 17 if they can. And then, his teammate Wyatt is right there behind him. But if you go higher than that, I want Jeffrey Simmons. I want Aaron Donald. I want an athletic freak who's not only going to disrupt the run game, but also you're going to have to put 2 guys on him. And if you don't, he's going to just destroy you. And even if you do, he could shoot the gap and just dominate you. Jeffrey Simmons in the playoff last year, it was just absolutely ridiculously insane. And, that's the profile I'm looking for. And I just don't see it with Davis. I don't see it with Wyatt. I don't see it with a D tackle this year. So, if you need interior help, yeah, he's a big guy. The question coming in the combine was he is a 2-down guy. I don't know if a 4.8, whatever, answers that question because he was limited in his playing time and they utilized him and he did get winded. I mean, you could see this is a guy who's a freak athlete at 360 pounds, but he would be tired after a couple plays. So we'll see about him. And the only position we haven't really hit yet is running back. And I know you like my guy, Dameon Pierce, I think he's going to slide to the third round. I think someone's going to get a really good one there. He runs like he wants to mule kick you every play. Like, you just get off me. Just
Yes.
get off me. And that's the type of thing that I don't see in other runners. I see Breece Hall as an upright guy, not overly difficult to tackle though. Kenneth Walker's sort of a slasher, not overly difficult to tackle. On it goes. Isaiah Spiller, same thing, not super fast. And then you got this guy who is built low, thick, and he has those legs and that churn, and he's just made to be an NFL running back.
Yeah, and he's got all the tools. And in addition to that, not only is he going to help you in every phase, he's one of the best receiving backs in this class. He's one of the best pass blockers in this class. And like you said, he's a fabulous short yardage runner. By the way, 39% of his rushes last year came against boxes of 7 or more guys. And he still averaged like 4.5 yards per, carry or whatever, with like 3 yards after the, contact or whatever. Because opponents did not respect, the Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. They weren't going to beat him downfield. So you could just gleefully stack the box. And Pierce managed to shine anyway. In really bad circumstances on that team. The other thing is, and this deserves to be mentioned, because a lot, you remember the Derrick Henry class or some guys like that they'll say like, the tread on the tire thing, and they'll get nicked for that. Dameon Pierce is the opposite, because Dan Mullen made a big mistake and didn't give him the ball more. But that being said, like, he had way less carries and took way less punishment than some of these other analogous running back prospects. I like the kid a lot. I mean, he also tested above the 70th percentile, so you can't say he's not a good athlete. And the one elite trait he showed was the 10-yard split, which we knew he was going to be good in that, because that's the one thing athletically that stands out. Accelerates so quickly. He bursts into that hole real fast when he sees it. So I like the kid a lot.
Yeah, this is going to be, I think, a running back class where you're going to get a lot of value late, and you're also going to get a steal like that. There's just, the guys you can go on early. Like last year, Najee was a first rounder to me. Etienne wasn't. And then after that, it was sort of, who do you like? Do you like Williams? Do you like Carter? Do you like, all these different guys? This year, I think if I'm drafting a running back, first of all, I'm not even looking at one in the first round. And then second round, I'm just going to see where this guy is. Like, okay, if Walker's gone and Breece is gone, now I got to worry. But I think he's going to be probably the 5th or 4th running back taken, probably behind a Spiller. And he's going to be the best one out of the group. So, it's Kareem Hunt. It's Nick Chubb. It's guys that, end up in the 2nd or 3rd round that end up being a lot better sometimes than the first rounders or the projected guys. So I think Dan Mullen, I don't know what he was thinking. I think he just sort of gave up. I think he cashed in at Florida and just said, screw it. I'm not going to even try. And Dameon Pierce was, losing money. I mean, he's losing money because of that, because, again, in a regular system where he was the guy, he could be 2nd round, he might fall to 3rd. So positionally, this is a defensive draft, obviously, it's not great at quarterback or running back. We didn't talk about the wide receivers, so I'll finish with that, because how do you forget wide receivers? And I usually try not to talk wide receivers because there's so many good ones. This year, it's especially puzzling. I've got Olave as my one. Who do you have?
I got Olave 2. I got Drake London number 1.
Because he's 6'5", 210, and Olave's not.
Well, because of the downfield ball skills. Like, I just think even in the NFL, it's going to require 2 guys going down with them, because I don't see any NFL cornerback, even the longest ones. It's really hard to compete with London as a downfield rebounder. So you have that utility, and then the spacing that's going to create for its teammates on an NFL field where the geometry can get congested sometimes. To have a guy that's going to yank 2 guys back, I think it's going to help out the rest of the team. So it's both those things. I'd say.
Yeah, he's Mike Evans. I mean, that's who his comp is, and I think there's just really no one else you can think of in this game where you just look at Drake London and you're like, that's Mike Evans.
Mike Evans.
Olave, with the way they're calling things nowadays, and with the way you've got your tremendous route runners, your Diggs and your Cups and even to a lesser extent, your Renfros and guys like that, who just can't be covered solo, especially in the red zone. That's where I see Olave making a lot of his money. Garrett Wilson, I like, right? He's not as good a route runner. And there are other wide receivers in this group, Christian Watson, some of this, the guys you really didn't get to see a lot if you're a regular fan. But to me, Olave, when he tested, I was like, whoa, that was the one thing I thought he wasn't going to do well at. And he tested well. And then you watch him set people up. Now, again, with his size profile, it's probably going to be London, Wilson. And then at that point in time, it's who you like, right? Olave, whoever else. And I'm not even going to go into tight ends because I don't think there's a tight end worth drafting until round 3, to be honest with you, in this draft.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be interesting to see, are you going to take, Treylon Burke, or are you going to take Olave? Do you want that smaller route runner, or do you want that big dude who could be Debo? I think there's going to be probably 5 wide receivers taken in the first round, and I think there's going to be some great values there. And as always, there's going to be 2nd and 3rd round values like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who just weren't used properly in college. Who do you think that guy is? It could be, to me, Jahan Dotson, because the quarterback play is so bad that he just never got to show what he could do.
I think that's a great call. The Clifford, I was thinking McSorley. Clifford is just the noodle arm scrambler. Like, for people that haven't seen Penn State the last couple, he's like, homeless man's Ian Book, basically, and just couldn't get the ball downfield. And then, Mike, as you know, they had a shitty offensive line the last couple of years. They had no running game basically whatsoever to speak of. And while Clifford's a good scrambler, like, functionally in the pocket, he doesn't run for many yards. So you don't get that out of him either. So Dotson was by far the best skill guy they had. And they did a lot of stuff of just forcing him the ball short and then trying to let him run around people. So he got this crazy usage, but you didn't see him get to develop the more fleshed out sort of route running downfield, because they needed to get him the ball every play, and because Clifford couldn't throw it downfield. So I think that's a good one. Yeah.
Well, we'll yap for 53 minutes. No one's going to watch all 53 minutes of this. It's just us talking. That went longer than I expected, but that's because I love talking about this stuff, and hopefully have you on again before the draft starts. It's always good to have a superhero on. Do you have the hammer around? Is the hammer in the office? No,
it's somewhere around here.
Where'd you get the name? How'd you get the name?
So my dad's, his name was Bob. And like, when he was a kid, like up in Brainerd, Minnesota, and I'm from, there was like 5 or 6, Roberts, I guess, in his class. And so they had to call, like, you had a Bob, you had a Bobby, you had a Robert, you had a Robbie. And he got one that he didn't like. I think they called him Robbie. So he hated it. So he sort of had it in his head, like, when I have a kid, I'm going to give him a name that no one else in his kindergarten class has it. And he succeeded in that.
Well, it comes from mythology, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
God of Thunder.
All right. I mean, I can't imagine there's like a Thor that worked at the grocery store or something that he liked the name. I mean, that's got to be. Now, are you required to have a beard with that name?
Maybe I wouldn't have to, but I've seen this comment on Twitter, like, people that have my job, the preponderance of beards is just so high. So maybe it's more that, but it doesn't hurt. Like if I've been, I'm 6 foot, 250 pounds. If I'd been like, 5'5" and couldn't grow any facial hair and he had a pipsqueak voice, it might have been a little different experience having the name Thor, but I'll take it.
We don't have time to shave because we are losers who watch film constantly. And when we're not watching film, we're trying to appease wives or others who are tired of us watching film. So that's not our fault. So don't blame us for the beards. I appreciate your time. NBC Sports Edge. This Thor Nystrom. I love the backdrop. I love the mini helmets. I like the old school too, like the Terps. That's not regular Terps. That's Randy White Terps. Well, it's not Randy White Terps, but it's like there's some old school ones back there. And then you got Pistol Pete at Oklahoma State, which is the best helmet arguably ever made. Yeah. So we'll talk more collectibles too if you come back on, and I appreciate your time.
Love to, man. This was super fun, and it was an honor for me personally. So appreciate it, Mike.
All right. Thanks. Thanks a lot. All right. We are clear.